Dr. Jonathan Ellison was the kind of man people trusted with their lives, literally. A top OB/GYN in New Orleans, he had delivered more than 1,000 babies, counseled countless women through their most vulnerable moments, and lectured at Tulane Medical School about the intricacies of the female reproductive system. At 42, his reputation was built not just on skill, but on a conservative, steady professionalism that made him a pillar of his community. To patients, he wasn't just a doctor, he was a guardian of womanhood. His personal life, however, was another matter. Since his wife's death from breast cancer 5 years earlier, Jonathan had buried himself in work. Friends tried setting him up. His teenage daughter Emily teased him about turning into a fossil if he didn't start dating again. But Jonathan brushed it off. Love, he thought, was for other people now. That was until a hospital fundraiser at the Ritz-Carlton changed everything. Lana Ruiz, a stunning 29-year-old event coordinator in a crimson satin dress, caught his attention in a way no one had in years. She was magnetic, her eyes sharp behind thick lashes, her laugh warm but calculated. She told him she had moved from California to start fresh, working part-time as a model and event planner. Jonathan was captivated. For the first time since his wife's passing, he felt seen, not as Dr. Ellison, but as a man. Within months, the relationship became the talk of his colleagues. It was fast, maybe too fast. But Jonathan, usually cautious, dove in headfirst. They vacationed in Puerto Rico, dined at upscale restaurants, and curated a picture-perfect romance for Instagram. Emily wasn't convinced. She called Lana fake and surgically perfect, questioning her lack of family, her evasiveness about the past. Jonathan dismissed it as jealousy. 6 months later, he proposed at the Ritz-Carlton where they had met. Their wedding was a lavish garden affair, complete with jazz quartets and fireworks. Jonathan, in a black tuxedo, looked every bit the devoted groom. Lana, in a form-fitting gown, looked like a woman born for the spotlight. Emily stood stiffly, arms crossed. Rumors whispered among guests, but Jonathan ignored them. That night, beneath the firework-lit sky, he believed he had found love again. But love, as he would soon discover, can be the most dangerous illusion of all. Within days, a secret would surface, one that would not only shatter his marriage, but dismantle his identity, destroy his freedom, and turn him from healer to killer in the eyes of the world. Because what Dr. Jonathan Ellison didn't know was that the woman he had just married was once a man, and what he did next would divide the nation forever. In the weeks after the wedding, the Ellison household transformed, at least on the surface. Lana's clothes filled the walk-in closet where Jonathan's late wife's dresses once hung. Her perfume lingered in the hallways, her makeup brushes lined the bathroom counter like an artist's tools. Jonathan told himself this was what moving forward looked like. A new life, the second chance. To the outside world, they were an enviable couple, the respected doctor and his glamorous young wife. Their photos on social media captured beach sunsets, candlelit dinners, and perfectly plated meals. But in the spaces between the pictures, something else lived. Emily noticed it first. Her father seemed lighter but distracted, almost like he was chasing a feeling rather than living it. Lana was affectionate in public but guarded in private. She laughed at his dry jokes but always steered conversations away from herself. Ask her about her family, she'd smile and say, "It's complicated." Ask about childhood friends, she'd change the subject. One evening, Jonathan hosted a dinner for a few medical colleagues at his home. Lana dazzled in a fitted emerald dress, greeting guests with air kisses and easy charm. She moved between the dining room and kitchen with practiced grace, offering wine, complimenting outfits, drawing just enough attention to herself without seeming to demand it. Yet Jonathan noticed, whenever someone asked about her work, she shifted. One moment she was a nutritionist, another time she was in fashion, then between projects. Later that night, as they cleaned up, Jonathan teased her about the inconsistencies. Lana laughed it off. "I've done a lot of things," she said. "Life's too short to stay in one lane." He let it go, convincing himself it was harmless. But Emily didn't. She'd started quietly checking Lana's public records, searching for a paper trail. She found nothing. No birth announcements, no school yearbook mentions, No old social media predating 2016. It was as if Lana Ruiz had stepped into the world fully formed in her late 20s. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emily drove to Jonathan's clinic unannounced, planning to take him to lunch. Instead, she saw Lana in the parking lot, locked in an intense conversation with a tall, muscular man she didn't recognize. His voice was low, sharp. "You promised," he said. Lana's reply was clipped, "I told you I'm working on it." Emily stayed hidden behind her car, watching as Lana ended the conversation abruptly and walked back toward the clinic, her face unreadable. When Emily asked her father about it that night, he brushed it off. Probably an old boyfriend. You know how people can be. But his tone lacked conviction. A few days later, during a quiet evening at home, Lana mentioned the idea of updating Jonathan's will. She framed it as practical, something any married couple should do. Jonathan said Emily was still his primary beneficiary. Lana's smile faltered, just for a moment. "I'm not saying take her off," she said quickly. "Just include me. Even partially. I mean, I am your wife." That night, after she fell asleep, Jonathan opened her suitcase. He told himself it was out of concern, but what he found was something else entirely, a sealed envelope containing a California ID card. The name on it was Luis Javier Ruiz. The photo showed a younger version of Lana, shorter hair, no makeup, dressed in men's clothing. Jonathan felt the air leave his lungs. He closed the suitcase, returned it to its place, and lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he watched her the next morning, the way she made coffee, folded laundry, kissed him goodbye, as if nothing had changed. But in Jonathan's mind, something had. A hairline crack had formed in the foundation of their marriage, and he could feel it widening with every passing hour. The honeymoon in Tulum was just days away. To Lana, it was the start of their forever. To Jonathan, it was the moment he would either find answers, or the truth would break them completely. The honeymoon resort in Tulum was paradise in every brochure-perfect sense. White sand beaches, turquoise waters, and an ocean breeze that carried the scent of salt and hibiscus. For most newlyweds, it would have been the beginning of a new life. For Jonathan Ellison, it was a gilded cage holding a question he couldn't stop replaying. Who exactly had he married? He kept the secret of the ID card to himself, but it sat in the back of his mind like a loaded syringe, waiting. He told himself there might be an explanation. Maybe Luis Javier Ruiz was a cousin, maybe a stolen identity. But deep down, he was a doctor. He trusted facts, not fairy tales, and the facts kept lining up in a way he didn't like. For the first few days, Jonathan played the role of attentive husband. They lounged by the pool, drank chilled cocktails, and walked along the shoreline at sunset. Lana wore sundresses and wide-brimmed hats, her skin glowing under the Caribbean sun. To anyone watching, they were bliss in motion. But Jonathan's gaze often drifted, studying her face for signs of the truth, her body for evidence of what he suspected. On their fourth night, Lana winced as they returned from dinner. "My stomach feels tight," she said, one hand resting just above her hip. Jonathan's medical instincts switched on instantly. "Where exactly does it hurt?" "Lower left." "Like cramping?" "Lie down. I'll take a look." "Maybe we can just wait?" But Jonathan was already opening his small travel medical kit. "We can't risk it. Could be appendicitis. Could be torsion. I'm not leaving it to chance." His tone was sharper than he meant it to be, but she lay back on the bed without further protest. The moment he began his examination, his suspicions solidified. Faint surgical scars only an experienced eye would notice. An unfamiliar pelvic structure. Slight asymmetry in the labial folds. For Jonathan, these weren't anomalies. They were confirmation. He'd studied thousands of female patients. This body didn't match what nature built. It matched what surgery could create. His hands froze. He pulled back, his chest tight. Lana's eyes searched his face. "What's wrong?" "You tell me," he said quietly. She sat up, pulling her robe closed. "Jonathan, how long were you going to keep it from me?" His voice was low, but the edge in it cut the air between them. "I was going to tell you. After the vows? After you moved into my house?" After you signed my name? I didn't lie to hurt you, she said. I lied because I was scared. Every time I've told someone the truth, they've left me or worse. I thought maybe if you knew me first you'd. Don't you dare make this about me being close-minded, he snapped. I've spent my entire life protecting women, caring for them, understanding them. And you tricked me into thinking you were one of them. I am one of them, she shot back, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. I've been living as a woman for almost a decade. Surgery. Homes. Legal documents. This is who I am. No, he said, his tone like ice. This is who you want to be. It's not the same. Lana's shoulders dropped, the fight draining from her. I love you, she said. I never meant to hurt you. Jonathan laughed, a short, bitter sound. You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me. You took the one thing I built my life around, truth, and burned it. Silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of the waves outside. Lana stepped toward him, reaching out, but he stepped back. The distance between them was no longer just physical, it was a chasm neither could cross. That night, Jonathan didn't sleep. He sat on the balcony, watching the moon ripple across the water, his mind cycling between rage and disbelief. He thought about his daughter, about what the hospital board would say if this ever got out, about the snickering of colleagues who might have suspected all along. He thought about the vows he'd taken, not just to Lana, but to the idea of truth. By sunrise, the man who had arrived in Tulum as a newlywed was gone. What remained was a man certain of only one thing: there would be consequences. The morning after their confrontation, the Ellison suite in Tulum felt like a museum, silent, sterile, and suffocating. Lana moved quietly, avoiding Jonathan's eyes as she packed a beach bag. Jonathan sat at the small dining table, sipping black coffee, staring out at the ocean without really seeing it. They spent the day going through the motions. Breakfast on the terrace. A slow walk along the shoreline. A dip in the pool. But the warmth that had once lived between them was gone, replaced by something cold and brittle. When their hands brushed, neither reached again. That evening, Lana suggested dinner at the resort's fine dining restaurant. Jonathan agreed, though he barely touched his food. Lana spoke in clipped sentences, forcing a smile when the waiter came by. Jonathan responded with nods and the occasional yes or no, his mind somewhere else entirely. Back in the room, Lana excused herself to shower. Jonathan remained at the table, staring at the half-empty bottle of wine. His thoughts were a storm: humiliation, betrayal, the relentless echo of Luis Javier Ruiz. Every moment with Lana now felt like a performance he hadn't auditioned for. Steam rolled out from the bathroom as Lana stepped into the bedroom, wearing a silk robe, her hair damp. "Jonathan," she said softly, "can we talk?" He stood slowly, his voice low and tight. "Talk about what?" "About us. About everything." "There is no us," he said. Lana's voice wavered. "Please don't say that. I made a mistake, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I was scared." "You weren't scared," Jonathan cut in. "You were calculated. You saw a vulnerable widower with a good income and a good reputation. You took your shot." "That's not true," she said, her tone rising. "I love you." "Then why didn't you tell me the truth?" Lana's eyes glistened. "Because I didn't think you'd love me back." Jonathan stepped closer, his voice cold. "You were right." The words landed like a blow. Lana turned away, gripping the edge of the dresser to steady herself. "We can fix this," she whispered. "We're married. We can." "Married?" Jonathan's laugh was sharp, humorless. "That ended the second you lied about who you are." "Who I was," Lana corrected, turning to face him. "This is who I am now. You can change your name, your body, your voice, but you can't change the truth." Silence fell, heavy and electric. Lana's breathing quickened, but she didn't back down. "The truth is I'm still me. The truth is I wanted a life with you. And the truth," Jonathan said, "is that I can't even look at you without seeing the lie." Lana swallowed hard, her face pale. She reached out, placing a tentative hand on his arm. "Jonathan, please." He stepped back, shaking her off like a memory he couldn't bear to hold. The air between them was dense with everything unsaid, years of pain in her silence, decades of control in his precision, and now a fracture neither could repair. They stood there, two people who had once believed in a future together, staring at each other like strangers in a room that no longer belonged to either of them. That night, Jonathan lay awake in the dark, the sound of waves pounding the shore matching the pulse in his temples. Beside him, Lana's breathing was uneven, restless. And somewhere in that long, sleepless night, a quiet but dangerous thought took root, one that would turn paradise into a crime scene. On their 6th night in Tulum, the facade finally cracked. The day had been quiet, too quiet. Jonathan barely spoke during breakfast, and Lana spent most of the afternoon by the pool alone, scrolling through her phone. The sky turned a bruised purple at sunset, and with it, the air inside the suite grew heavy. Neither wanted to admit it, but both knew this wasn't a marriage anymore. Jonathan sat at the small balcony table, nursing a glass of scotch, watching the waves roll in. Lana stood at the vanity, brushing her hair in long, deliberate strokes. Every movement felt exaggerated, almost like they were performing for an invisible audience. "We should go home early," Jonathan said suddenly, his voice flat. Lana paused mid-stroke. "Home? We've only been here a week. I've got patients waiting. Surgery's booked. There's no point staying." She set the brush down slowly. "So that's it? We just pretend none of this happened?" Jonathan turned toward her, his eyes cold. "I'm not pretending anymore." Lana's jaw tightened. "You think you know everything because you've seen a piece of paper and some scars? You think that's all I am?" "I think you're a liar," he said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lana's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "I loved you. I still do. But you can't see past what I used to be." Jonathan rose from his chair, setting the glass down with a deliberate clink. "You didn't give me the choice. You decided for me. Because I was scared." Her voice cracked, the dam finally breaking. "You don't know what it's like to have people walk away, to be called disgusting, to be left with nothing. I thought maybe if you knew the real me first." "The real you?" Jonathan's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I married a stranger, Lana. I don't even know your name anymore." "It's Lana," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "It's always been Lana to me." The silence between them was suffocating now. Lana took a tentative step toward him, hands open, a gesture of surrender. "We can work through this. Please." Jonathan shook his head slowly. "No. We can't." Something in Lana's expression shifted, a flicker of desperation mingled with resolve. She reached out, her fingertips brushing his arm. "Jonathan, I can't lose you." He stepped back, and the small movement felt like a chasm opening between them. "You already have." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the muffled rush of the ocean through the balcony doors. Then Jonathan turned away, moving toward the dresser where his phone sat charging. Lana's reflection in the mirror behind him looked pale, almost ghost-like. "You're not the man I thought you were," she said softly. Jonathan's grip on the phone tightened. "And you're exactly who I thought you were trying not to be." It wasn't shouting. It wasn't a physical fight. It was something quieter but far more dangerous, the point where love curdled into finality. That night, the suite felt smaller than it ever had, the air thicker. Lana slept facing the wall. Jonathan didn't sleep at all. And in the early hours of the morning, when the horizon began to glow, a decision crystallized in his mind, one that would change both of their lives forever. In that still, pre-dawn silence, Jonathan Ellison stopped being a husband in trouble and became a man on the edge. The morning broke over Tulum with a strange stillness. No gulls, no chatter from the pool deck, just the steady hiss of the ocean. Jonathan stood on the balcony, watching the waves crash against the shore, feeling as if each one was eroding what little control he had left. Lana was still asleep, her form curled beneath the sheets, the rise and fall of her breathing the only sign of life in the room. He thought about the ID card again, Luis Javier Ruiz, and the months of laughter, dinners, and vacations that now felt like an elaborate set piece. He thought about his career, his reputation, and the certainty with which he had once lived. That certainty was gone, replaced by a gnawing humiliation he couldn't seem to silence. Around mid-morning, Lana stirred. "You're up early," she murmured. "I didn't sleep," Jonathan said without looking at her. "Jonathan, please. We can talk. We can fix this." He finally turned to face her, but his eyes were cold. "You can't fix what you built on a lie." Lana sat up, clutching the sheet around her. "It wasn't to hurt you. It was to protect myself." "From what?" "From exactly this," she said, her voice cracking. "From the look you're giving me right now." He didn't respond. Instead, he moved into the bathroom, running cold water over his face. In the mirror, he saw the reflection of a man he barely recognized, jaw tight, eyes shadowed, posture rigid. The rest of the morning passed in silence. Jonathan scrolled through his phone, half looking at patient messages and appointment reminders, half wondering how quickly gossip could travel from Mexico to New Orleans. Lana sat on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring out the balcony doors. By early afternoon, she approached him cautiously. "Let's go to the beach. Get some air." He hesitated, then agreed. They walked side by side without speaking, their shadows long against the sand. The breeze was warm, but the space between them was cold. Back at the suite, Lana poured herself a glass of water. Jonathan stood by the dresser, his eyes fixed on her every movement. She set the glass down and turned toward him. "I'm not leaving, Jonathan. Not like this." Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of something darker. He stepped forward. "Maybe you should." "No," she said firmly. "I'm your wife." "You're a stranger," he replied. The words hit her like a slap. "You think I'm less than you. That I'm not real. I know you're not who you said you were." Her voice rose. "And I know you can't handle the truth because it doesn't fit in your little box of what's real and what's not." "This isn't about a box," he shot back. "It's about the fact that you made me a fool in front of my own daughter, my colleagues, my friends. This is about your pride, Jonathan. That's all it's ever been about." He took another step toward her. She didn't back away this time. "You want to leave? Then leave," she said. "But I'm not running from this." What happened next was sudden, too fast for either of them to process in the moment. Jonathan's hands were on her shoulders, pushing her back toward the dresser. A lamp wobbled, then fell, shattering on the floor. Lana cried out, more in shock than pain. "Don't touch me," she screamed. But he didn't stop. His hands slid from her shoulders to her arms, his grip tightening. "You lied to me," he said through clenched teeth. "Let me go. You lied to me." His voice was almost calm now, but his eyes were wild. And then his hands moved to her neck. The first instinct was to pull away, but Jonathan's grip was firm, his thumbs pressing in just enough to cut off her breath without leaving immediate marks. Lana's eyes widened, panic flooding her expression. She clawed at his wrists, kicked at his legs, but he knew exactly how to position himself, exactly how much pressure to apply. Seconds stretched into a terrible eternity. Her movements slowed, then stopped. Jonathan stood there, chest heaving, the sound of the ocean roaring in his ears. He let go, and Lana's body crumpled to the floor. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Jonathan knelt, checking for a pulse he already knew wasn't there. He closed his eyes, exhaled once, and stood again. His hands trembled, but his face was eerily composed. In the distance, he could hear faint laughter from the beachgoers below. Inside the suite, there was only silence, the kind that follows an irreversible act. It was 2:18 a.m. when the call went through to the resort's front desk. Jonathan's voice was steady, almost clinical. "My wife fell," he said. "She hit her head on the dresser. I think she's dead." Security arrived within minutes. They found Lana lying near the dresser, her robe open slightly, her body positioned too neatly for an accident. Jonathan stood nearby with a towel draped over his shoulders, looking pale but not disoriented. His explanation was simple. She had been feeling dizzy since dinner, tried to get up from the bed, and fell. He said he'd attempted CPR. At first glance, the scene could have passed for a tragic accident, A broken lamp, bruising along the collarbone and temple, no forced entry. But small details stood out. The straightness of the body, the lack of defensive injuries, the faint but unmistakable marks around the neck. Detective Sandra Hartfield, vacationing off-duty nearby, happened to be among the first responders called in to assist. She had handled dozens of domestic disturbance cases and could read a room before a word was spoken. "Did she have a history of fainting?" she asked Jonathan. He shook his head. "What did she eat tonight?" "Grilled fish." "Any allergies?" "Not that I know of." Hartfield's eyes moved from Jonathan's composed face to the faint scratches on his forearm. "She didn't press, not yet." The body was transported for autopsy, and Jonathan was told he could return to New Orleans once paperwork was complete. He did, keeping his head down. The local news called it a honeymoon tragedy. That narrative shattered when the autopsy report came back. Cause of death, manual strangulation. Not blunt force trauma. Not a fall. The report detailed the parallel thumb-shaped bruises, the burst capillaries in Lana's eyes, the telltale signs of oxygen cut off by human hands. The case was now a homicide. Jonathan was arrested without incident at his clinic, escorted out in front of stunned patients and staff. Emily got the call before the news broke. "They say your father killed her," a voice on the other end said. She felt her knees give way. The trial began 6 months later and quickly became a national spectacle. On one side, LGBTQ+ activists demanded justice for Lana, calling her death a hate crime. On the other, conservative commentators framed Jonathan as a man trapped by deception. The courthouse steps became a daily protest site. In court, the prosecution painted Jonathan as a man whose pride and identity collapsed when faced with the truth about his wife. They presented the autopsy photos, the inconsistencies in his story, and, most damning, hotel security footage of him dragging Lana's body a few inches to stage the fall. Emily took the stand, her voice steady but her eyes wet. "My father changed after he met her. He stopped listening to me. And when she died, it didn't sound like grief in his voice. It sounded like relief." The defense didn't deny Jonathan killed Lana. Instead, they argued it was a crime of passion, born of psychological shock and emotional betrayal. A forensic psychologist described it as acute identity collapse, when a person's foundational understanding of reality is destroyed in an instant. Jonathan himself testified. "I didn't kill Lana because she was transgender," he said. "I killed her because she lied to me about something I could never compromise on. I built my life on precision, on truth. She knew that and hid it from me." The prosecutor's final question was blunt. "You strangled her with your own hands. That's not a reaction. That's a choice." After 11 hours of deliberation, the jury found Jonathan guilty of voluntary manslaughter. The sentence, 18 years in prison with the possibility of parole in 9. Emily stood outside the courthouse, cameras flashing. "My father is not a monster," she told the press. "But he's not a victim either. He made a choice and now he has to live with it." In the months after sentencing, more of Lana's life came to light. Friends from California described a woman who had fought her way out of abuse, addiction, and poverty, crafting a new identity to survive. Some called her a survivor. Others called her a deceiver. Detective Hartfield found herself returning to a note Lana had once written but never sent. A letter to Jonathan. "I wanted to tell you. I was afraid if I did, I'd lose you. I just wanted to be loved without fear." The letter never reached him. But Emily found it months later, folded inside one of Lana's journals. She read it alone in her apartment, tears slipping down her cheeks, and felt the uncomfortable truth settle in. There were no clean villains here. Just broken people making choices that hurt everyone. 2 years later, in New Orleans, a women's health clinic opened under a new name, the Ruiz Wellness Center. It specialized in trauma-informed care for women, transgender clients, and survivors of domestic violence. Former patients of Jonathan helped fund it, framing it as both a tribute to Lana and a step toward healing. No one knew who left the single white orchid at its doorstep on opening day. Some said it was Emily. Others whispered it was a friend from Lana's past. Whoever it was, the message was the same. Love and truth are not the same thing, but both can be fatal when mishandled.